Welcome to another episode of the Impropod podcast. My guest today is a film and TV composer who's worked for Sky Arts and Channel 5, Myles McLeod. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit about what you're working on at the moment.
So at the moment, I'm about to embark on a horror/thriller feature film, and it's to do with vampires that live in rivers. So I was thinking using instrumentation that's quite playful, like harps or celestes that usually denote quite wondrous, magical moments, but with a twist where it's used in a dark way. The director is very much into his folklore, and it's probably going to take some inspiration from that. I kind of want to make it grow darker as the film grows. So it begins light and happy, but then progressively, every time she's near the river, it just starts to deteriorate and get darker as she gets closer to the truth. It's always a process of reworking it until you find the perfect sort of mood or theme that you think works best for the film. Trial and error.
So I'm going to play you a piece of music and I want you to tell me what it makes you think of. So that's any kind of thoughts, emotions, ideas that come to mind, and don't overthink it too much. All right, here we go.
I just imagine myself in a forest. For some reason in Japan, even though I've never been, there was an Asian sounding something going on there. I just felt like I was on my own, wandering aimlessly, and it resolves at the end. There's like a nice sort of happy, warm feeling near the end of that piece. I feel like I've found what I was looking for as I was journeying through this forest.
I use mostly black notes for that. And I don't know why it makes people think of Japan or just Asian countries generally.
I think it's because of the pentatonic scale was used very often in their music, so potentially that was it. I was in a safe environment at that point, seeking something, because it's kind of repeating, and I felt like it just needed to end somewhere, and then it did. And it was just as if I was wandering around and then probably came across something that resolved all my issues, but I don't know, it's where I went in my mind. It's the power of music.
So I'd like you to tell me a story of some kind. It can be anything you like, something that's happened to you from experience, and then I'll break it down into sections and improvise a soundtrack to the story.
I've heard some fantastic stories on here. Mine's about the sort of double life I lead. Alongside my composing, I also work a day job. So I work at the Bristol Hippodrome, if anybody knows, the big theatre in the centre of town. I'm a front of house customer assistant there. I've been doing it for 6 years, because the reality is composing is a very hard job to go completely freelance with, because money has progressively become more difficult to get, really. I co-work with Ian Masterson, who is the music producer for Strictly Come Dancing. I was invited down to Elstree Studios, where Strictly is filmed. I got to hang out with the band that plays alongside dancers, which is what Ian arranges music for every week. And I got to meet David Arch, who's a conductor as well. Then a few months later, our feature doc, The Pilgrimage of Gilbert and George, which is on Sky Arts, premiered for the first time down in London, so I was invited to go down there. And I was speaking to this guy. I recognise his face, but I don't know who he is. And about 20 minutes later, Ian actually finally introduces me to him, and it turns out to be Chris Lowe from the Pet Shop Boys, who he's just invited. And alongside him was the lead singer of The Feeling, Dan Sells. So suddenly I find myself surrounded by more celebrities, and we go and watch the film, and then we end up going to dinner all together. And I find out that Chris Lowe is a massive Arsenal fan, which I am as well. And that really sparked the conversation. The next day, I came back to the Hippodrome again, and I was working an evening shift and then living this double life. And I was like, what is going on? This is so weird. So I come back, and then my friends at work are like, oh, what did you do yesterday? I was like, I was hanging out with the Pet Shop Boys. So it's a bit of a surreal experience, because film composers, we're usually quite incognito. We're not in the limelight very much. And I think the uniqueness of working with Ian is that he works as a music producer for big artists as well. So he will produce music for Kylie Minogue and all sorts of different people. It's a very surreal life I'm living at the minute.
So musically, if I was to improvise a soundtrack to this dual life you're experiencing, do you have any ideas?
I guess from a musical perspective, I'd say simplicity and probably routine could be one repetitive note. And then the other side could be colourful and chaotic, because that's how I feel when I'm in that environment, because I do not feel like I fit in that environment. I felt quite uncomfortable, actually, certainly at the screen. So something surreal musically as well.
The idea of fame is such a weird thing. It's not curated by the people who are famous often. It's curated by the audience and the need for people to follow someone and to put them on a higher point. They're just people. You go around, you just meet these people, and they're just...
And they are.
Often they like to be treated just like people. They don't like this sense of this weird...
Being put on a pedestal. Yeah, absolutely. And they are very down to earth once you get speaking to them. It's like the Hippodrome, because I meet quite a lot of people through that as well. I met Ian McLeod. That's the highlight, because I love Lord of the Rings. They are just people, but they've had such a life. I think it rubs off a little bit. It could be that it's just a me thing where I'm wowed by seeing them, but I always feel like there's a certain aura around them that's a little bit different from somebody who hasn't been in the limelight. And to finish that story, I just feel like my whole life is a double life, because I'm actually originally from France, and I was born and raised there for 18 years of my life. So I've got this whole background and cultural background as well of living in France, where it's a very different world from the one I live in England. And people never know that I'm actually can speak fluent French. I don't have a French accent, so I'm quite incognito. At the Hippodrome, it's quite fun when French people turn up. I always know that they're French. They're speaking with this really strong French accent when they're speaking English. And then I'll just flow into French. And for a minute, they just reply. And then suddenly they realise, oh my God, you're speaking French. I'm like, yep. It's quite fun to do. But it does make me feel like a spy in a way.
Yeah. Infiltrating the English spy that works for Strictly. What better way to steal information than get a job on Strictly?
All right.
Maybe I could go for this, expanding your story here. I could go for the French side musically, and then the simplicity, as you say, and the routine of working in the theatre, and then this other kind of more chaotic but uncomfortable life you lead with all the celebrity stuff. I could try that as a 3-part piece. I need to brush up on my French music though. I mean, French music, Satie comes to mind. Maybe I'll try and channel his sort of technique, if you like. Let's see where this goes. What did you think of that?
That was a roller coaster. Yeah. Oh, I loved that. That was great. So, yeah, how you split that into 3 parts. You did well, actually, getting that French sound at the start there. Where it was a nice, that sort of leaping jump with the chords and the bass and the left hand. I lived in the south of France, Vincennes province kind of areas near Cannes. Reminded me of being in a square and seeing the life go round, people moving, going to different places. There's a lot of old villages there. You did really well for the second and third parts of your piece to get that juxtaposition with the sort of repetitive notes in the second part, where I felt like there was also emotion, quite a lot of emotional, like sus chords and different things going on, so that were moving, and it made me reflect on. Sometimes I work on main doors at the Hippodrome, and I'm just looking out the window, and there's not much to do. When everybody's in, you're just there as a doorman to let people in and out. So there's a lot of time to reflect, and I felt like it was quite a reflective piece of me reflecting on my double life, if you like, because I might be there and I'd be like thinking about, I've come a long way in my life, but I'm still doing this job. Yeah, just pondering about my life. I often do, and that's what I felt in that sort of second part. And then in the third part, the sort of more manic, chaotic notes coming in, and certainly in the right hand going on down, and obviously that pull towards the chaos of and madness of that other side of my life, where it just suddenly it's not something I planned. I never planned to go to these places and meet these celebrities and such. It's just a sort of byproduct of being with Ian or working in the industry, and it's when I'm in and amongst it, it is chaotic like that. So it was just making me think of those moments. So you did very well to reflect it.
I tried to get a sense of glamour and chaos as well. I don't know if that came across.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I was thinking sparkly dresses and all sorts going on there, yeah.
You've got the red carpet, you've got the celebrities in very expensive outfits, and they look very shiny. This idea of me playing something that's reflecting on you reflecting on something is quite an interesting idea, isn't it?
It was. I was also thinking of rain when it rains on the main doors. This whole imagery was happening in my head when that was happening.
So story number 2 then.
This one's based on a story of sacrifice in order to get to where I am today as a composer. I've had to sacrifice things along the way. I was based in France to begin with, and the reason why I moved is because of music. In France, there isn't a very good music scene as there is compared to Britain. Even with education, I remember at GCSE level, that's where it ends. There's nothing you can do beyond that. I'm not big on music theory. I've actually come from a band background, and I started with a private music teacher who actually got all his students, he got us all into bands. He had enough students by the end of it to create about 6 or 7 bands. And he'd put on these events around different villages where we'd perform in front of people. Within the band, he would get us to play all sorts of different instruments. So every song we'd be on something different. Played on accordion, on a harmonica, on percussion instruments, as a bassist, guitar, piano, lead singer as well. From the age of 13 up until I was 18, I actually wanted to go down the performing route, but from a modern perspective. And in France, there isn't any route really into that. It's classical or nothing. I was very fortunate, though. There was a school in France, an English school, and I joined that to do my A-level music. I ended up getting into the University of Westminster, so I went to London. The first sacrifice, I guess, was leaving my home country, my friends, my first partner as well, to go to the University of Westminster. So it was actually a very hard time for the first couple of years. The only family I had was my uncle. He was in London. I left a lot behind, and it was very hard to adjust. And I think for the first year or so, I really struggled, but I persevered and I stuck to the course. I did the first year. My partner broke up with me. It was very tough, and I was only 18, so trying to find my feet. First time I've not lived with my parents either, so it was a big change. But that was the start of many sacrifices, I think. I continued through university, did my 3 years. I met some people on my course who I formed a band with. We actually became a signed band for a while. Now, it was great. I had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed performing on stage. But there was an element to it which I didn't enjoy, was that I didn't have much sway with the composing side of things, mainly because the way I wrote didn't really suit the sort of style for the band. We were like a Florence and the Machine sounding band. And also I wasn't very good at writing singer-songwriter songs. It's not me. I think lyrics are my downfall. I just had this pull towards film music and had to make that tough decision and then leave the band. And I regret it in a way, the way I ended it. And I think I was developing into somebody who really wanted to write his own music. Then I actually took some time away. I went to China for 6 months. I did some teaching there. And then I decided I'm going to do a course in film music. And so I did a master's, and that's how I came to Bristol. And I'd met someone at the time as well. We actually went to China together. She encouraged me to go. I met her 3 months before she went off to do this teaching stuff. And then 6 months later, I joined her as well. And we'd been together for 9 years. And then recently things ended because she ended up going to Coventry to do her teaching degree, and I went to Bristol to do my master's. Had I gone to Coventry, I would have lost a lot of contacts I had in Bristol. I was getting a lot of work, and I just don't think it would have worked very well. So we had to make a tough decision, and then in the end, that relationship crumbled as well. I look at my friends, for instance, some of the people I went to school with, and they've moved on. They're in 9-to-5 jobs. One of them's an engineer. He's managed to save a lot of money. He probably could buy a house at this point. They're at a different stage in their lives compared to where I am, because I've made a lot of financial sacrifices to be able to do the thing I love, which is music. And the reason why I'm starting to become more successful and I've got these ties to this crazy other side to my life is because I've persevered. And I think a lot of people give up at a certain point because of all those sort of factors I've mentioned. They'll probably make a choice at some point where they go, music's not important enough compared to this, which I totally understand, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, it's my life. I breathe it every day.
This idea of sacrifice for music is an interesting musical thing in itself.
There's a possibility to bring in the emotion for what's being lost and then bring in the emotion for what's actually being found. I've found success, I've lost other things, but I'm doing what I love. So when I play music, I'm in my element. I'm me.
So I'm going to try and get an element of that sacrifice to start with, and then the reward that comes from it.
A challenge. Minus a major, there you go.
You don't want to go really cheesy on it.
It's much more complex than that anyway in real life, so it doesn't have to be that black and white. They intertwine, don't they?
Okay, here we go. What did you think of that?
Love that. And I think it encapsulated everything.
Good, quite experimental actually. Real dissonance, but just trying to keep the pattern. Weird harmony.
I felt like there was a lot of tension, dissonance going on, and yet a structure that remained, that persevered with the sequence that was moving up and remained really throughout, whilst there was a lot of tension and a lot of pulling. And it just felt like that tension, I almost did give up music for the person who I was with for 9 years, to join them. And I was planning on joining them and then planning on getting a more stable job and probably reducing the amount of music in my life and probably finishing my career. I was very close to doing it. And in that piece, I felt that tension and that pull, that urge to do that. There's a temptation to go, music's not worth it, not that much, but it is to me. And in the piece, that tension within me was really felt there. I was like, it hit hard. I know a lot of people who've sacrificed a lot for music, even those who are in relationships or who are married or who have kids. There's a sacrifice there as well, in the sense of the amount of time composers actually get to spend with their family. I'm in a new relationship now and they're very busy as well, but I'm very busy and we don't find that much time to spend with one another. We're okay with that. I think it works. But for some people, that's not what they want.
So what did you get out of this podcast?
A lot of reflection. Definitely. But I think that's good. It's good to vocalize a lot of this stuff because you live it, but then it's good to take a moment and pause and reflect on your life and notice where you've come from and how you've grown and the journey along the way, because it's all part of it. It's all part of the experience of being a musician. So I think this has helped me put that into perspective somewhat.
Did you find the music helped you reflect?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely did, especially on an emotional level to connect with it. Yeah. Very useful. That's my language. I'm not used to speaking much. I usually just play.
Great. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Where can people check out your music?
Yep. So I've got a website. So if you pop on to www.mylesmcleod.co.uk.
So I sent Myles some chords, which are based around this idea of sacrifice, and then he's going to work on it and we're going to create a short piece of music with this particular vibe and see how this works. But this is an experiment. I've never done this before. So I sent him the chords and he sent me this composition back with this message. Hi Luke. It ended up as a blend between this double life story, feeling like a spy, and the tension and unease of sacrifice. The piece turned out quite cinematic in nature, but I found the piano chords gave way to that nicely. Lots of tension and a climactic finish that represents the anguish experienced from all the sacrifice. It ends with the piano seeing the track out with a descending scale, reflecting the come down from all that emotion. It ends unresolved, as despite the positives that have come out of the sacrifice, there are always questions that stay with us, such as, was it all worth it? I could actually see this doing really well on the opening credits of a thriller or crime drama. So here is Myles's piece, based on the chords that I sent him. Yeah, great piece. I love it. I like the way it builds up until the end with the strings. I feel it really resonates with this idea of sacrifice. Join us next time for another episode of ImproPod. Thanks for listening.